In any organization, there's this tiny group of people, the star performers, who just drive a huge chunk of the results. But if you look closely at who these stars are, whether it's in science, law, or in the boardroom, you start to see a pattern. They are overwhelmingly men. And that's not just a coincidence, it's a real mystery. Today, we're going to solve it. So this is the big paradox we're digging into. All the research is clear. On average, men and women walk in the door with pretty much the same skills, education, and potential. But as their careers go on, this massive gender gap opens up at the very, very top. And look, this isn't just about fairness. It means companies are literally leaving incredible talent and value on the table. So what is really going on here? Okay, first, let's just get on the same page. When we say star performer, we're not just talking about someone who's good at their job. We're talking about someone who creates exceptional, way out of proportion value. They have these rare qualities that lead to incredible outcomes. They are, by definition, the absolute top of the top. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The research points to this powerful and often totally unconscious shortcut our brains take. It's called think star, think man. It means that our default mental image of a star, someone who is aggressive, brilliant, a real go-getter, is implicitly tied to masculinity. And this hidden bias, it doesn't just affect who gets a promotion, it shapes the entire journey right from day one. So to crack this mystery, we're going to go on a little journey. First, we'll look at the invisible headwinds women face from the start. Then, we'll see how the rules of the game literally change on them. After that, we'll expose the vicious cycle that traps so much potential. And finally, we'll talk about how to actually build a system that's truly fair. All right, let's start at the very beginning. Picture this. Two people, a man and a woman. Equal talent, equal drive, they walk into a new job. From that moment on, they start to experience the workplace in subtly different ways. We're not talking about big, obvious discrimination here. We're talking about tiny, cumulative disadvantages, what the research calls invisible headwinds. So the first headwind is all about skill development. A huge part of how we learn is by watching a master at work. The fancy term is vicarious deliberate practice. This usually happens through mentorship. But here's the catch. Since most leaders are still men, they tend to mentor younger guys who remind them of themselves. This gives men a tailwind. They get a front row seat to learn from the best, while women face a headwind, with fewer powerful mentors who see themselves in them. And this isn't just a theory. A study of a top law firm found this exact thing happening. As this quote says, partners are just naturally drawn to protégés who remind them of a younger version of themselves. It creates this closed loop that makes it so much harder for talented women to get those same game-changing opportunities. The next headwind, it's feedback. To become a star, you need sharp, honest feedback about your actual work. But the research shows this massive gender divide. Men tend to get direct, task-focused critiques that actually help them get better. Women, on the other hand, often get feedback that's kind of vague or focused on their communication style, being told they're too aggressive or maybe not enough of a team player. One type of feedback builds skills. The other just polices behavior. And then you've got opportunity. You don't become a star without a resume full of high-stakes, challenging projects. But managers, often without even realizing it, assign more of these career-making tasks to men. Women get disproportionately saddled with what researchers call non-promotable tasks, or my favorite, office housework. Think organizing the holiday party, taking meeting notes. It's all essential stuff, but it's not going to get you that corner office. This quote from a female lawyer just nails the frustration perfectly. When you become the mother of the team, everyone praises you for being so helpful and supportive, but at the same time, you're being pushed away from the very work that builds a star reputation. And finally, let's talk motivation. A lot of paths to the top are structured like these intense winner-take-all contests. Research suggests that, in general, men are often socialized to thrive in those kinds of environments. For many women, though, that same setup can be really demotivating, and the performance might even dip more sharply after a loss. So the very structure of the game can be another headwind. So let's just sum up this first stage. Women are facing what the research calls insulators across the board. In terms of their knowledge, skills, and abilities, they're getting less direct access to learning and less helpful feedback. For motivation, the hyper-competitive environment can work against them. And for opportunity, they get fewer big chances to prove themselves. Each one is a small thing on its own, but you add them all up, and it creates this significant drag on a woman's career right from the get-go. Okay, so let's move on. Let's imagine a woman has somehow managed to overcome all those early headwinds. She's proven herself, she's seen as a rising star. You'd think, okay, great, the playing field is finally level. But you'd be wrong. As she gets closer to the top, a whole new set of even tougher insulators pops up. The standards literally start to shift. So the key thing here is how performance gets evaluated. Men who fit that think star, think men prototype, they're judged by pretty consistent standards. But for women, it's this crazy paradox. They might face a lower bar just to get considered for something, maybe for a diversity initiative, but then they face a much higher standard to actually be confirmed as a true star. Any improvement they make is valued less than the exact same improvement from a man. The goalposts are constantly moving. It's wild. Next up, the social cost of success. When a guy performs at an elite level, it's expected, it's celebrated. But when a woman does the same thing, it can violate those old-school gender stereotypes about being nurturing and supportive. And this can trigger something called backlash. We're talking envy, social penalties, even rudeness at work. Her own competence becomes a source of friction, which, as you can imagine, is incredibly demotivating. And these headwinds, they reach right outside the office doors. At this senior level, the big star-making opportunities often mean travel, maybe even relocating. Research points out that men are just more likely to have a partner whose career can flex to support them. Women are more likely to have a competitor partner, someone with their own demanding career. So when a big decision has to be made, like who moves for a job, societal norms often mean her career gets put on the back burner. So in this advanced stage, the insulators just get meaner. Your actual skills are judged by biased, shifting standards. Your motivation gets hammered by this backlash effect, where doing well is actually punished. And your big opportunities can be limited by factors totally outside of your control. Even for the most talented women out there, the path just keeps getting steeper. And now we get to the most critical part of this whole thing. These insulators, the early ones and the later ones, they don't just add up. No. They feed into each other, creating this compounding, vicious cycle that is incredibly hard to escape. The research uses this devastatingly perfect metaphor: death by 1,000 paper cuts. See, it's not one big thing that holds a career back. It's the crushing, compounding weight of countless tiny disadvantages day after day. So here's how the trap works. It starts with less access to the big, important projects. That leads to vague, less useful feedback. When she succeeds anyway, her performance is judged by those biased standards and her credit gets minimized. And then that perceived underperformance is used as a reason to give her, you guessed it, fewer big projects. And the cycle just repeats and tightens, pulling her back every single time she tries to get ahead. Okay, so this all sounds pretty bleak, right? But the research doesn't just diagnose the problem, it actually offers a way forward. And the key is, we don't need to fix women. We need to fix the systems they're working in. We have to move from what most companies have now to what the research calls equitable meritocracies. And this is a really important distinction. A nominal meritocracy is what most places claim to be. They say, hey, we're fair, the best people rise to the top, but they're blind to all those hidden insulators that make the game unfair. An equitable meritocracy, on the other hand, is a system that actively hunts for and tears down those insulators to create a truly level playing field. And there are two key tools that can help make that happen. So how do we start to break that cycle? The first tool is most powerful in those early career stages: strategic diversity goals. And this is so important. These can't just be some nice words on a website. They have to be real, concrete goals that leadership is actively pushing for. Because when leaders truly champion diversity, it sends this powerful signal through the whole organization. High-potential women are valued here. It forces managers to rethink how they hand out assignments and give feedback. It directly attacks that think star, think men bias. It's all about disrupting the cycle right at the start, making sure women get those crucial first opportunities to even get in the race. Now, the second tool is for that really tough advanced stage when a rising star is facing those shifting standards and backlash. This is where you need more than a mentor. You need an influential sponsor. See, a sponsor does what a mentor can't. They spend their political capital on you. They fight for fairer evaluations. They work behind the scenes to get you opportunities. They make sure you get public credit for your wins. And maybe most importantly, they act as a shield, absorbing some of that backlash and envy that can totally derail a high-performing woman, which lets her just focus on doing great work. Ultimately, this whole thing points to a fundamental shift in how we think. For decades, organizations have been focused on star cultivation, trying to pick the winners early on. But that whole process is just riddled with bias. The research suggests a much better way: star facilitation. And the takeaway here is profound. Stop trying to predict who the stars will be. Start building a system that allows them to emerge from anywhere. And that brings us to the final, really important question. I want you to think about your own workplace, your own team. Who gets the benefit of the doubt? Who always gets the cool, high-profile projects? Who gets mentored by the most powerful people? In other words, who's getting the tailwind? Because the answer to that question tells you whose stars are being allowed to be born and whose aren't.